Hey guys, we have a 2002 Honda Civic today, and we're going to be doing the upstream oxygen sensor. Now, this particular engine is the 1.7 liter. It's pretty much the same procedure on most engines as far as removal. Now, locations can differ. Sometimes they're very tight spaces, sometimes they're very open. This one I want to say is about, fairly easy, just a little bit difficult because of the way the wiring is run on it. But let's go ahead and get started. I'll show you where it's located, and then we'll kind of go from there. Alright, so just to show you the area that we're going to be working in essentially now, this oxygen sensor is located right there. You guys can see it where kind of my fingertip is. And essentially the wiring runs right in front. It's bolted up there using a 10 millimeter. Then it goes to this little bracket to another bracket where the connector is, which is basically right here. So the hard part about this one is basically this wiring, the way it's set up, because you got to unbolt it. Usually there's little clips that you pop off on most cars. In this scenario, that's not the case. Also, the other thing that might be difficult is we're going to see if that oxygen sensor is going to want to come off there or if it's going to fight us. Now, this is a Chicago car, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to bust out the torch and heat that up before I remove it because I don't believe it's going to come off very easily. It's pretty rustic down there. So let's go ahead and begin. What I'm going to essentially do, and can't really position the camera anywhere for you guys to see this, but I'm going to unbolt this here and unsnap the connector, and I'm going to make my way down and disconnect the wire right up there. And then what I'm going to do is basically lift the car up and start working on the sensor. Now I'm going to basically just work the connector and the wiring for now, guys, and when I have the car up in the air, I'll show you the rest of the process. So I've decided to try to show you this process, guys, because it's actually, a little tricky if you've never done it before. So essentially for this connector, you're going to want to basically push. Now, I don't know if you guys can hear that snap. Once you have that snap, you just basically pull out. That's essentially how you get the connector out. Then you're going to want to follow it down here, and this may be a little tricky, but you want to basically push it down and out to unsnap it, and then we got it off of that. And now for down here, it's essentially the same thing, and that's basically how you get your wiring connector off. Now I'll show you once I get this off in a little bit better detail. So let's get the car lifted up, and then I'll show you the rest of the process through the bottom. Okay guys, so we got the car raised up in the air, and essentially our oxygen sensor is right above here. So what we want to do essentially is just kind of move this plastic cover out of the way. Now you don't have to fully remove this. What I like to do is basically just kind of, pull it out and, bend it towards me, have a little zip tie or something or a bungee cord hold it down just so I can get access in there. But one thing I noticed is that there is a clip holding it in here. And the problem that is going on with this clip here, it looks like someone has broken it in the past. So what I'm going to have to do is basically break it off to be able to get it off. Now, these plastic clips, I'll be honest with you, they're just, ridiculous to get off sometimes. Sometimes they just fight you for no reason. Even if you put them on brand new and the car's been out on the road for about a year or two and it's been, hot, and cold and just kind of fluctuates a little bit, they essentially basically break. You'll never get them off. In this scenario, I have new clips for this. So what I'm going to do is basically take my little puller tool and I basically just push it in there at the top of the head and just basically break it off. And then what you can do is basically push the rest of the stuff up and it'll come out. So essentially, now that we made our room there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bungee this out of the way, and then I'll show you guys where the sensor is. Okay guys, so I have you positioned. Now that our cover's out of the way, we basically have our wire hanging down for this oxygen sensor. What we're gonna do now is basically fish the wire down so we can kind of get it out of the way. Now my wire got stuck here, so give me a second, let me just grab it. All right, so now that we got our wire down here, what we're gonna want to do is basically take our wrench here. Now I'm gonna try it and see if it comes off. They do make specialty sockets for this, but however, I feel a wrench might work better. Let me try and figure out which one I'm gonna use. Okay guys, so I figured out what I'm going to be using here. I'm going to be using the specialty socket made for oxygen sensors. It has a slit cut in here because essentially what you're going to do is you're gonna basically run the wire in it like this. And if you guys can see there, it allows you to basically get the wire in there to spin them on and off without breaking anything, because you can't get a regular socket on there with the wire being attached to the head. So you're gonna want to line this up like so. Now I gotta hold it with one hand, and then we gotta basically match up our ratchet. Once you figure out your positioning here. Now I tried putting this on with the ratchet attached, and it just doesn't work. It gets caught up on the compressor here. So essentially what I'm gonna do now is, hopefully I don't need to heat it up, and I didn't. This thing is actually coming off like butter. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm gonna savor this moment because this does not happen very often. Very rarely do they come off this easy. At least where I'm from. Maybe if you live in California or Florida where it's nice and hot all the time, you guys maybe get these things off like butter. But for me right there, that is a win. I thought I was gonna be busting out my torch and heating everything up. So essentially, now what I'm gonna do is, it's loose enough, I don't even need my tool. I'm gonna go ahead and just spin it off. Now, if you have to heat these up to remove them, it's essentially the same process, and I'll kind of show you here once I remove my oxygen sensor. So now that I got it off, basically, if you're going to be heating it up, you're going to heat up the base of it right here, guys. You don't want to get up here, because if you heat up here, you're going to damage it, and you're going to basically snap it. You always want to get it kind of where the bolt is. Sometimes if these things are really rusted on there, they will rip threads out as they come out. I've seen it. So if it's very hard after you've heated it up, or you're trying to take it off and it's really moving slowly, you got to be careful, because if these threads start ripping apart the threads on whatever it's going into, you're in trouble. You're gonna basically have to take it to a muffler shop or weld in a new bung, which is basically the adapter piece that would go on here. Alright guys, so as you guys saw, got my sensor out. Now I've got the camera out of the car. I'm going to be showing you the new sensor. Now typically when they come, they're going to have like a little protector on here. Usually they do. And what you'll find like on this one is they already put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. Essentially they use anti-seize so it doesn't stick in there. So what you want to do essentially, every time you get a part, guys, you always want to match up. Mainly you want to make sure you guys have the same connector like we do here. And then what I do is I just kind of hold them side by side. And then we can see we have the same mounting point there, and we have the same mounting point there essentially. And then obviously the sensors are identical. So we're gonna say that this is the correct sensor. We matched it up. Now, what I was saying earlier in the previous video essentially, now this is what is called a bung. I know it's kind of fun to say, guys. Honestly, I want to laugh every time I hear it or I say it, but it's called a bung. Essentially what this is when this is bolted up, this is basically welded into the pipe or wherever it is that your oxygen sensor is mating up to. And essentially what I was talking about, when they rust a lot in there, guys, what happens is you'll rip the threads out of this, essentially whatever's bolted up in there. And what you have to necessarily do when that happens is you can opt to go to a muffler shop, or if you have a welder and you know how to weld, you go to the parts store, you pick up one of these. Now I have a welder here, I weld, so I keep these on hand because normally I'll have, one or two a year where they just, strip out the threads. There's no sense in trying to retap them. I got all the tools that can try to retap them, but they're so far gone, usually you can't get them in. The hole's too enlarged. So what I basically do is I'll put a plug in the existing hole. So if this is the, one that's stripped out, I'll basically block it off with a plug, and I'll weld a plug on there. And then what I'll do is I'll take my new bung and I'll position it somewhere very close. I mean, as close as I can to the actual original position. And I'll basically drill out the hole. So this part, you can see it's kind of stepped. So that part can push in essentially. And then once I push it in and it's nice and snug, now you're not going to make a massive hole where this thing falls in there. You just want it nice and snug. I just do it to the point where I basically have to force it in there. So that gives me a nice tight seal. And then what I do is basically weld around it. That's just a little tip. Now, in this case, I don't have to do that. Otherwise, I'd show you. And I'm actually very thankful because, like I said, guys, these in Chicago usually give you a fight for your money unless the car is only a couple years old. This thing is a 2002, and this thing came off like butter, and it is an original part, so I'm happy. This is a win in my book. Okay, now that we basically have our new sensor, we got the old one out there, and I've pretty much gloated on how happy I am this came out, and I basically got a win on this one. We're going to take our new sensor, And what I always like to do is grab onto the wire and start basically putting it in there. Now, always start off by hand, guys. You do not want to basically just take a tool and thread this in. Always hand thread whenever possible. Now, these can be a little difficult to start simply because that wire is attached to it. As you can see, this thing is fighting me. You just gotta kind of find that sweet spot, like right there. Now, I know I'm probably blocking your view and you guys aren't seeing much of what I'm doing here, but basically just started off by hand. It took 2 hands to actually get the thread started on it. So once we have it threaded and basically stopped, now what I'm going to choose to do to tighten it is, instead of using my socket, I'm going to use my actual wrench. These have varying sizes, guys. What I normally use is I believe this wrench is a 7/8. So I'll normally just grab this and just, snug them up. Now 7/8, I believe it comes out to 22 millimeter. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that is the sizing on it. 21 or 22. And these do have a little crush washer, so you just want to keep spinning it and you'll kind of feel that gasket and crush washer essentially crush. Now, you're not looking to tighten this on like crazy, guys. Once you feel that you've tightened the crush washer and it's tight, that's all you need. Like right there, I felt it. Let me just give it one more, and that's pretty much it. So just to kind of show you guys how this works as far as these little holders for this particular car, essentially what it is, it's like a C clamp. So imagine my finger, it looks like a C, and the way these work is they basically go up and over and they catch on. That's how they hold on. So when I was removing them, basically I'm just slipping them out and getting them off. Now that's how both of them are. Originally I thought it was like a clamp with a 10 millimeter bolt holding it on, like a wraparound holding it, but it's not. It's basically just something that looks like my finger here, like a C, and you just slide it on and pop it off. So I just want to show you guys that on camera so you kind of know how to take them off. So now we're back up top. Now I did my little clips here where they hold on the wire on the bottom. It was just a lot easier. To be honest with you, if you are doing this job on this particular engine, when you get the car lifted, it's a lot easier to get access to them than doing it up here. It's not difficult, but you just have a little bit more room to work. I only realized that when I was there at the bottom. So now basically all I have left is my connector. Now this one's kind of nice. The actual harness side is on the car. It's hard mounted onto a bracket. So all you got to do basically is just slide it in. Now when you slide these in, make sure you hear an audible click. As you'll see, I'll be quiet here for a second. You could probably pick it up. Make sure you hear that, and then grab it and basically pull on it just to make sure it's nice and tight on there. So that pretty much wraps up this video, guys. We are done working on the Civic. What I got to do is basically hook up my computer, clear the codes, give it a test drive, and just make sure that we fix the problem and just verify everything. One thing that I want to tell you guys is be careful when you guys do your oxygen sensors. Now this one's relatively simple. It's a 4-cylinder engine. It only has 2 sensors. If you're working on a V6 or a V8 or anything that has basically a V in it, which is basically more than a 4-cylinder, essentially what a V is, basically you got 2 sides of the engine. This is the V essentially. Let's say this is bank 1, this is bank 2. Now each of these banks basically have a sensor. The one that's, let's say towards the top, which would be, let's say right here, would be bank 1 sensor 1, and the one that would be down here at the bottom would be bank 1 sensor 2, and the same thing goes on this side. You have bank 2 sensor 1 and bank 2 sensor 2. It can be very confusing. Make sure if you do plan on doing this yourself, make sure you get the exact correlation to where it is on the car, because sometimes you will replace the wrong one. It can be a little confusing, a little bit tricky. So just want to give you guys that as a little tip. So with that said, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe, because that'll help my channel grow. And I will catch you guys on the next repair. So I'll see you on the next one.